Hello whisky fans, I've been looking forward to this one. It's Johnnie Walker Green Label. So Johnnie Walker Green Label, I do feel like I've got a little bit of a personal connection to this whisky because Green Label was one of the first serious bottles of whisky that I bought when I was first starting out. And I remember that it had this big green premium looking box, and on the box it listed 4 distilleries that produced whisky that went into this blend. So you have to remember that Johnnie Walker Green Label is a blended malt or vatted malt, what they used to call a pure malt a long time ago. So there are multiple single malts in this whisky, we know of at least 4, and no grain whisky. And reading about the distilleries on the box, I think that's what really made me first start thinking about the different distilleries and the different flavour profiles that they all contribute. And the actual whisky in the bottle was really what made me start thinking about and looking for all the different flavours and complexity that you can get in a whisky, whether it's a single malt or a blended malt. I'm a great believer that all the people in the world that say that they don't like whisky or that they can't pick up the subtle differences and nuances in whisky, it's just because they either haven't had the right whisky for them or they've never had a whisky which allows you to pick out those finer points. Because if all you've ever had is the cheapest of cheap whisky, a lot of the time those whiskies do just taste like cheap, harsh whisky. But this here Green Label is a real eye-opener for anyone that's starting their whisky journey. It's a really good one. So let's get on with the nosing and the tasting. So immediately on the nose, that it's just such a huge step up from the red label and black label. It's just this immense sweet and sour note that leaps out of the glass at you. You've got lots of sweet honey notes and some sourness. There's almost a lemon soap note, some slightly peppery oak. It's almost a hoppiness, a lemon hoppy aroma, as well as some damp oak and some nice grist in there. I'm looking for this a little bit harder than I probably should be, but I think there is a touch of smokiness there. But it's just the faintest wisp of wood smoke. It's not a heavy, dirty, definitely not a medicinal Islay style peatiness. But what you do have to say about the nose on this one is that it is definitely a complex nose. So again on the palate, it's compared to the other Johnnie Walker expressions, it's an explosion of flavour. And again, you've got this sweet and sour theme, you've got some lovely pineapple, orange, citrus, and less so compared to the nose, but a little bit of a lemony theme there as well. Lovely contrasting complementary flavours. What you have also got on the palate, which is really nice, is you've got a really nice touch of aged malt. So this whisky does carry a 15-year-old age statement. So all of the whiskies, all of the 4 that are named and anything else that goes in there has to be aged for at least 15 years, and I think you can actually tell. So I'm getting a little bit of a tannic tea note on the palate as well, which is always nice in moderation. And again, that's something that you quite often associate with some of your more well-aged whiskies. And also there's some sour wood smoke on the palate, and I'd say there's much more smokiness on the palate than there is on the nose, although still not overly smoky. It's definitely not a peat bomb. Also has to be said that especially late on the palate you do get a sense of some rather modern, almost engineered raw spicy oak, which is not ideal, but it's in the background. It's not enough to spoil anything. So for the finish, I would say it's a reasonably long finish, quite long. But although you've got some nice dense flavours on the palate, the finish is reasonably mild. You've got some more nice hints of sort of well-aged malt and a nice sour smokiness. So it's a good finish, but could be better. And that really brings me to probably my biggest criticism of this whisky, and that's that if this had been bottled at 46%, I would be giving it probably another step up on the grades. So what grade am I going to give this? It's going to be solid B. And as I said, if this was 46%, I'm sure it would be a B+, just to give it that little bit of extra body and power, especially in the finish. So it's interesting to think about the whiskies that Johnnie Walker mentioned go into this. You've got Cragganmore, Talisker, Linkwood and Kalila. So me personally, I can definitely smell and taste a lot of Cragganmore sweetness, sweet and juicy Cragganmore in there. And I think there's evidence of Linkwood as maybe being used as the base in this whisky. Talisker I'm not really picking up so much. I think Kalila can be a lot of different styles, but I think that probably the majority of the smokiness and also some of the sweet, juicy, sour, fruity notes are possibly coming from the Kalila as well. Now, this whisky, Green Label, was introduced in 1997 and it was discontinued in 2012. And for 4 years, this whisky didn't exist except in some overseas markets, I believe. And it was brought back worldwide in 2016, and it's remained a part of the core range since. I have done an A/B testing between the old pre-2012 bottling and this more modern bottling, and I will say that the modern bottling, although it's very good, it is a little bit of a step down in that it's a bit simpler and a bit more rounded than the old bottling, but it's still very good. The main thing is that it's a massive step up from the Johnnie Walker Red and Black, so if you like those at all, definitely get a bottle of this to try, especially if you can find it at a good price. And it really is, for anyone who's just starting out in whisky, it's such a good eye-opener and educator for anyone that's really looking for something with that little bit more to offer. Really good one. Cheers.